Okay, everybody, in case you don't know where you're at, you are at Geek'd Con in Shreveport, Louisiana. Okay, this is your panel, Mr. Henry Thomas. All this is about you guys getting to connect with him to ask the questions that you've been wanting to ask, hopefully getting the answers that you're looking for. So this whole thing revolves around participation. This is not an interview for me to be sitting up here and asking you questions, although I will ask you some stuff if you guys decide that you have can't think of nothing, but it's all about you guys, okay? So that's what I really want. Kay Hizzle went somewhere. But if you guys have a question, our microphones that were Bluetooth that connected in here and worked really nice, and she could walk out there and hand it to you, just seemed to stop, and somebody from the convention center has not been up here to fix it yet, so we are stuck with these. So just speak loudly so he can hear you, please. We are going to open it up to the very first question out here in the crowd. So who's it going to be? Okay, absolutely.
So, hey guys, I'm CJ, I'm from Shreveport. So I love a lot of things that you've been in. And by the way, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
The movie that I first saw you in, you were very young, and I was very young, was Raggedy Man. And you were like the older son of Sissy Spacek. What was that experience like?
Well, that was actually the first film, first real professional acting role that I had besides local theater. And I had started to become interested in working as an actor when I was five and a half, almost 6 years old, when I went to the theater and I saw Star Wars in 76 or 77, I guess. And I just thought, when I was watching it, I thought, wow, those people, they're doing that for a living, you know? And for me, I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, in a very small town outside of San Antonio, but it's one of those things where if you meet someone from Texas, you say the major city that you're closest to, that you grew up close to, and then when they say they're from Texas, then you say, oh, well, I'm from, Elmendorf or wherever, and sometimes they know it, sometimes they don't. But I grew up out in the middle of nowhere. I had no affiliation with the film business at all. And nobody in my family was in entertainment. Come from a very blue-collar, working-class, farm and ranch kind of background. But my dad was a trumpet player. My dad had me in music lessons from a very young age. And he insisted that I learn the piano, and I hated the piano, and I hated the piano lessons most of all. But my piano teacher was named Miss Smiley, and Miss Smiley was the theater musical director for the local theater group. And she actually put me in my first role as a 1920s newspaper boy, that I would come out in the middle of the play and sing this little song. It was like, I think, here, I'll do it for you because I still remember it. I came out and I'm in the knickers and the flat cap, and I say, extra, extra, read all about it, songs for sale. And then I'd go off stage. And I did that like every day for like 2 times a day for 3 weeks, and I thought, this is great. This is much better than piano lessons. And then Star Wars kind of cemented it for me. I thought that would be a good thing to do. And it just so happened that a couple of years later, Sissy Spacek had won the Oscar for Coal Miner's Daughter, and Universal, back in those days, the the studios would kind of give you a favor if you had a successful film. Well, they would give you another film, and what do you want to do? And Sissy wanted to do this small film set in Texas in the 1940s during the Second World War about a switchboard operator in a small town. And I got the part, I auditioned and got the part to play her oldest son, and that was the film Raggedy Man. And Raggedy Man not only opened me up to being a professional actor, but it also indirectly led to the audition for E.T. because it was a Universal film. And Spielberg at the time was working on Poltergeist. The editing bays were right across the hall from each other, and they were being worked on. Well, Poltergeist was in production, but Raggedy Man was being edited for the final theatrical cut. And the editor and the director, Jack Fisk, the editor of Raggedy Man was named Ed Warshika. They put together a clip and gave it to Spielberg because they had heard he was looking for a kid for his upcoming film. And then I got the audition, I got the part for that. And so within the first year of getting Raggedy Man, I also worked on a TV special for NBC. So I was in the Universal wheelhouse, and it's like the famous, 5 degrees of fame where they're like, who is blank? Get me blank. What is blank doing? I want someone like blank, and then I want a younger version of blank. I guess I was at the first and second phase right around then in 81, and it just ended up working out, and E.T. became a unforeseeable success. Like with that next year in 83, it was just, things were opening up for me, and it was a very strange situation, but it all pretty much came about from Raggedy Man. And so thanks for bringing that up, because it's a very important film for me, being my first film, but also being able to work with that group of people, Jack Fisk, Sissy Spacek, Eric Roberts, Sam Shepard, R.G. Armstrong, a lot of really great actors, and it kind of set me on the right course, I felt.
Good question.
If there ever was a sequel, and I don't think there should be, would you play Elliott again?
I think they would be looking for the younger version of Henry Thomas. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think that there needs to be, because I feel like it would kind of fall on its face. But at the same time, of course, I would reprise the role, because I think Elliott would have to be a part of it somehow.
Yeah.
If it ever happened, which I don't know. I think someone would have to pass away before that will ever happen.
Oh, are you? Do you ever talk to Erica Laniak about that kiss?
No, but I've seen her a couple of times over the years, and it's always kind of funny, because at the time when I was 9 or 10, that was the most devastatingly embarrassing thing I could think of having to do, in front of a room full of adults, you know, let alone the other kids my age. So, yeah, I was very, very scared to do that scene and embarrassed by it. And the compound matters, you know, she was about a year and a half or 2 years older than me, which when you're a 10-year-old boy, that makes a big difference, you know. And she was about 1.5 feet taller than me, I think, too. So we had to work that out. And Stephen just said, "Wait, we'll get this kid. You crawl over there like you're looking for the frogs, and then you stand on his back." And they all laughed, and yeah, it worked.
Yeah.
What memories do you have, or stories do you share about the movie Cloak and Dagger?
Well, Cloak and Dagger was, it was a great experience because at that time E.T. was a big success, and as I mentioned earlier, you know, if you gave the studios a success in those days, they would turn around and give you something back. So Cloak and Dagger was there giving something back to me, and they filmed it in my hometown of San Antonio, and they kind of rewrote the script. It was an existing script based on it was based on a Hitchcock thing called The Window, not Rear Window, but The Window, about, it's basically a boy who cried wolf story. You know, it's a kid who is known for lying and living in a kind of a fantasy world, and he witnesses a murder and tries to tell people, and of course they don't believe him because he's always lying. But they kind of infused all the stuff that was popular at the time and kind of close to my heart, which was role-playing games, video games, and spy stuff, which in the early 80s, you know, that was in the zeitgeist. So there was a video game called Spy Hunter where you would drive a car and you had oil slick and missiles and all sorts of stuff. You know, it was a lot of fun. But I was 12 at the time, and it was great because it was a part that was catered to me. And unfortunately, when it came out, nobody went and saw it. Oh. So I think it had a pretty dismal opening at the box office and was quickly panned. And then, you know, as I said earlier, when you give the studios something, they give you back something. And since I gave them nothing, they gave me back nothing.
Oh.
Yeah, and that was the end of my deal at Universal, actually.
Another question, anybody? Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Mike Flanagan role?
Yeah, I have one with a caveat, I guess, because I did really enjoy working with Mike, especially because he gave me a lot of interesting characters to play, and they were all very different. I had the most fun playing Henry Wingrave in Bly Manor because I had a lot of things to do as an actor. I had an accent. I got to play, you know, a character that had a sort of a duality to him and an alter ego. So I had never done anything like that before, so it was kind of exciting. My favorite character in an overall piece that we've done, like my favorite of that work with Mike, has been Haunting of Hill House. But I probably had the most fun playing Freddie Usher in House of Usher because it was, I kind of went off the page a lot and and invented a lot of things for that guy that weren't in the script because he was kind of a straight arrow in the script. But it was a lot of fun. It's fun working with Mike Flanagan.
You know, question anybody? Yeah.
Okay, here is what's it like working with Drew Barrymore on E.T. and especially on the scene where E.T. chasing Drew Barrymore's character?
Well, the funny thing about Drew was, you know, she was 6 when we filmed E.T. She couldn't read yet, so we had to kind of, you know, we'd have to help her memorize her lines through rehearsing. And sometimes, you know, nudging her and stuff when it was her cue, because, you know, at 6 years old, the veil between reality and fantasy isn't quite lifted, you know. They kind of see through it sometimes, but it quickly comes back. And so for her, you know, the animatronic creature was real, and she would worry about him while we were on lunch, you know, wrap a scarf around him because the studio was cold and things like that, you know. So she was really funny to have on set because she was a very precocious kid, and she would say some pretty outrageous things. But I don't think she's changed much, you know. She was always kind of a movie star. So I think it's perfect that she has a talk show and does all of that now.
It's a good question. Anybody else got a question? Yes,
I just
sir.
want to know what it was like to be the first younger Norman Bates and working with Olivia Hussey. Did you get to work? I know you didn't have any scenes with Anthony Perkins during that movie, but what that filming that movie was like?
That was a great experience, and I did spend a little time with Anthony Perkins on set because he you know, we had kind of a Norman Bates powwow about what you should and shouldn't do as Norman Bates, and I was 18 at the time. It was I had just graduated high school that summer, so it was the first time that I was actually on a film without my mother, you know, which was kind of ironic because it's a film about a guy with mother issues. But yeah, we filmed it in Florida at the time. It was 1990, and it was the newly opened Universal Studios Orlando, and we filmed on the back lot there. And they had built the Psycho house to kind of mirror the Universal in Hollywood or Studio City. And then it was Mick Garris that was the director, who was a great guy, and it was wonderful to work with Olivia. It was great. It was great to have a chance to sit with Anthony Perkins and talk in depth about a character that, you know, he had invented, and you know, I watched Psycho probably about 35 or 40 times that summer to kind of get the body language and all of that. And I was 18, so I was very serious about it. But yeah, it's funny because that film has come back. Audiences, a lot more people have seen it recently than ever saw it back in the day. It's interesting to me because, like, I look at it now and I see myself as a, you know, young actor, and I kind of I like what I was doing, you know, but But I like watching myself as a kid or as a younger actor because I have some separation now from it, and it's almost like watching a different person, and which is nice because usually I can only see myself.
Yeah.
Your question?
I got two questions actually. First question is, has there ever been a time in a movie where you've gone all script? And the second question is, if there was any actor, past or present, that you could work with, like Robin Williams, Elvis Presley, to name a few, which ones would you want to work with?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, as far as going off script, usually you only do that when you have to, in terms, because sometimes it doesn't match up. Sometimes you get to the location or you get to the set and, a writer's in a room with his laptop or word processing apparatus, and he may or may not have ever gone outside and ran down the street in his life. So a lot of times you have situations where, you're like, this is physically impossible. I can't hold on to the umbrella and the dog and talk on the phone because I don't have enough hands, and they should have thought about this when they were writing it. So you have to change things, and you have to be fluid enough as a professional. You have to be fluid enough to know when it's more economical to change something and save the production a day or something if you do it that way, as opposed to the script. So, but ultimately, as an actor, you're always being told what to do to some extent. Like you can't just do whatever you want because the director or the producer or the writer will disagree with it. So you have to be kind of fluid, and all of the great actors, I think, are able to do that, to accommodate things. As far as who I would like to work with, living or dead, well, I had a chance to work with Gene Hackman in 1983 on a film called Misunderstood, which a lot of people didn't see. And I've always thought of him as the greatest American film actor that we have, and I would love to do something with him again.
Yeah, can you give us some insight on what it was like to work on Legends of the Fall? Maybe kind of any interesting or funny behind-the-scenes stories?
Oh yeah, that was great. That was probably the most fun I've ever had. We filmed it in Calgary in '93, I think, '94. No, it came out in '94. We filmed in '93, and I was only meant to be there for like a month or 3 weeks. But the weather that year was so bad that I ended up being there for 4 months. And of course, a lot of time I was in my hotel, but I was on weather cover for, you have a cover set, so the weather's bad, they'll switch gears and move everything inside for the interiors, or if the weather's good and they're on interiors, they'll say, let's go outside because we got to get this. So there was a lot of, the director liked to, Ed Zwick, he liked to shift gears a lot, and sometimes he was wrong. Oftentimes he was wrong about shifting gears, which led to me being there for 4 months. But it wasn't bad because they had built the entire set, and they had the corral and the barn and all of that out in this Indian reservation where we were filming. And so oftentimes I'd be bussed out to set And then I would sit in my trailer all day in costume, kind of waiting to see if it was going to rain or not. And when I had those days, I could always just go to the corral and I could say to one of the wranglers, hey, can I take a horse out? And they would say, sure, most of the time. And they'd just send another wrangler with me with a walkie-talkie, and we had 10,000 acres out there and the Bow River, and it was beautiful. And so I spent a lot of that time just riding around on that Indian reservation, which was great for me. And I got to work with a grizzly bear, Bart the bear, that was really scary. I don't know if you've ever seen a grizzly bear in real life, but you immediately understand what it's like to be a prey animal. Like you feel it in your soul. But he was a very nice bear for a bear.
Meeting a bear is on my bucket list. Like actually being able to be that close to a full-grown grizzly.
I don't know.
Obviously not one in the wild. I want to be in a controlled environment.
When he stood up on his hind legs, he was like 10 feet tall.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And, it doesn't sound that, like, you can talk about it all you want, but, like, when you're about 30 feet away from a bear, like, and all he'd have to do is change his mind and I'm dead.
Yeah. 1,000 pounds and do whatever you want.
Oh, God, yeah. And he would just, totally silent too, because the handler, the trainer, had raised him from a cub, and he knew all these hand signals and stuff. So the trainer would do like this. Bart open his mouth and shake his head, and then in post-production, they put in all of these like, but at the time it was just silent. He was just like, it looked kind of lazy about it. Like he'd scratch the dirt, and it looked like he was just doing this, and you'd see these big, like, just like someone had taken a plow and just gone down there. Just the immense strength and power of those things. It was funny because the day that he arrived on set, I was on a horse, and I was probably about a good mile away from set, right? And I was with another wrangler, and our horses started getting all jittery in the ears, you feel it. And I was like, the hell is it? Is it the wind? That they're freaking out? And Wrangler's got Jim, he goes, oh no, Bart the bear just arrived, they smell him.
Oh.
And I thought, oh yeah. Of course, time to run.
Yes.
Do you have any upcoming projects with Mike Flanagan?
I don't have any upcoming projects with Mike. The last thing we did was follow the House of Usher. That's not to say that it won't ever happen again, but I think, he's in transition now. His deal at Netflix is over. He's gone over to Amazon. I don't know. I think he's working on gearing up for Stephen King Dark Tower. But he has a few things that are in post-production that are coming out. Like there's a film he did called Life of Chuck.
Yes.
But I'm not in that. There are a lot of other familiar faces are though. So.
Did you play the ghost of Jack Torrance in Doctor Sleep?
Did I play the ghost?
Doctor Sleep. Did you play Jack Torrance?
I played Jack Torrance. It was kind of Delbert Grady, Jack Torrance, and Lloyd, the bartender, kind of rolled into one character. Because I'm in a couple of scenes in the third act towards the end. It's the hotel, the house trying to throw up images to lure Danny in. And so of course, you know, the main takeaway is the look is meant to be like Jack Nicholson in The Shining.
Here's Johnny.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to do that.
Yeah, but that was fun. I was only on set for a day, but I had to shave my head a month in advance, and I did more work. I did more work getting ready for a tiny amount of work than I've ever done in my life.
Question?
Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, with a lot of the Flanagan projects, they of course, have big twists and everything. What I'm wondering is, how secretive were they about that? Was there any funny behind the scenes secrets with someone else letting songs?
Well, I mean, we weren't allowed to talk about anything for sure, but we had a lot of the scripts in advance. So as a cast, we kind of knew what was happening in the story. Because oftentimes on series, especially like network shows, you don't get the script for the next episode until like you're almost in that episode that you're filming. So aside from conversations with the showrunners about your character, you don't know the exact business that's going to come up later, which I find really annoying as an actor, because I don't like to get caught out. I like to know the whole story before I start, because there's often little things that you can do to kind of tip off things later on, and I feel like it kind of makes you look like an idiot if they pull the rug out from under you. Like, for instance, I did this film about the American Revolutionary War called, it was not a film, it was a limited miniseries on, I think, the History Channel, right? It was called Sons of Liberty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I played John Adams.
I thought that was you.
Yeah, and they filmed me. They told me that they wanted this reaction, and it was a scene where John Adams walks down a Boston street and he looks out and he sees the Boston Tea Party happening, and he's kind of, he's not sure this is such a good idea. He's kind of shaking his head and turning away, like, they've opened up a can of firefight now, But they used that reaction for the Boston Massacre, which was totally a different thing, And John Adams had a totally different view of that, because he was actually
the defense lawyer. He
was the defense lawyer for the British soldiers, and he was, I was so angry that they had used that, because it just looked like bad acting, So it looked like, no big deal. Shot some American citizens. Killing the colonists. But, things like that you can avoid that I couldn't avoid, because that happened in the editing room. But when you know the full story, it's always much easier as an actor. I don't like it when they throw things at you last minute.
I have a question. If you could be in any movie and you got the role in the past, what movie would, like past or present, what movie would it be?
Ooh.
I'm sorry, I know it's a tough one. But.
Well, it's hard because, you know, I think for me, the most fun I've ever had working and things that I really like to do, kind of films like All the Pretty Horses or Legends of the Fall. Basically anything I can get paid to ride a horse in and maybe shoot a gun in.
Stage
Like, oh, cool, I'll do that. But so for me, like I would like to be in more films like that. You know, roles like that are fun for me. And it's something close to my heart. Which isn't to say that, you know, the other ones aren't any fun, but I just have the most fun on things like that.
Cool question.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there something that you auditioned for that you didn't get to play?
Oh, many, yeah.
Is there one in particular?
That I wish I would have gotten?
Yes, sir.
Oh, there's several. Yeah, there's a lot. Like, I mean, they were like, you know, the way it goes, or the way it used to go anyway, these scripts would float around, and if you were at a big agency or you were in the mix or you were on a list, you'd read everything. You'd get to read it all. And after you read scripts for a while, and when you have to read scripts, you know by about the 10th page if it's good or bad. And you also know when you finish a script, this is going to be big, right? Like, this is going to work. It's well written. It's like Legends of the Fall was like that. All the Pretty Horses was like that. But I mean, All the Pretty Horses, I had read the book and I knew all of the, you know, the in-depthly, I knew it. But there are things that you see come across your desk or whatever, and you say, this is a vehicle for that character, and it's going to make whoever gets it a star. And it's kind of funny when you see that and you miss out on it, and then it's absolutely, you were absolutely right, you know, and the person that they chose, suddenly, like, you're playing next to you in a, like, third string supporting role, and you're thinking, man, I was so close. But that's the business, you know, it happens, and people have this saying, which I hate, but they go, oh, well, you know, it's so-and-so's time. It's so-and-so's time. And that really isn't true. It's just, like, they say Missouri is the show-me state, but I really think Hollywood is the show-me state, because you have to constantly reiterate yourself, and you have to constantly prove and show them, I can do this, because generally, you know, you get put in a category. Like after Legends of the Fall, I couldn't get a part where I didn't die halfway through the movie. You know, it's like, one year I died like 8 times. And, you know, you can get stuck in a rut. So what you have to do is just, you know, you have to constantly sort of work against type. And, you know, films that I missed out on that I could have had, there are a lot, but, like, you know, there were also reasons why I was glad I didn't get it. Like, I don't want to tread water behind Ben Affleck for 6 months, you know, just to help him out. help him look better. You know, so me not getting Pearl Harbor wasn't such a big deal. And, you know, Edward Norton, you know, I can't remember, what was the movie with Richard Gere and Edward Norton where he was? Primal Fear, yeah. So everybody wanted that role because they knew it was a breakout role. And, you know, and I got so many callbacks, and I went and auditioned for it like probably 4 or 5 times, and then I didn't get it, you know, and that's when it really gets you, because you're like, why did they call me back if they didn't want me? But, you know, you take those lumps and you just get back on the horse, really. You just got to keep working. That's it, you know. It's like I've had lulls in my career, and I've had, you know, parts on jobs that I've hated, but you always do the best work you can, and you just keep working. And that's how you survive, basically. Because I think, you know, it's like you can't shoot for fame, and you can't shoot for glory so much. What you have to shoot for is just consistent good work. And if you can do that, if you have the means and the skill to do that, then I think you can kind of parlay that into a career. But it doesn't often feel particularly successful at various times. You know, you often feel like a babe in the woods.
What do you find easier, shooting a movie or shooting a TV series?
Well, it's basically the same thing, except the pace is usually faster on a TV production. They usually take more time on films. I prefer films just because I feel like it's kind of more honed into, let's take our time and get it right and do the best we can. Whereas TV is usually more disposable, like in terms of the crew and everybody involved, you know, like running out of time, falling behind, let's get it, you know, and they're more concerned about the schedule than they are about the work most of the time. So I prefer films.
All right, everybody. Y'all give him a big round of applause.